lavoro e di caporale. I cubloi po rusula rusu, holaka holala, halagu
Howdy, and welcome back to Film And. It is a chilly night here in Burlington. There's this sharp wind that's coming up from the lake, and it's putting us at about 34 degrees. That's what my phone says we're at. But, this week we're not talking about the impending freezing temperatures that we all slowly crawling into with the months of winter. We're here to talk about a very hot movie, just a dry, dusty heat wave of a movie. And that movie, which you may be aware of, is the 2021 film Dune, an adaptation of the original sci-fi epic novel from back in the 60s, I believe, from the director of Blade Runner 2049. And Arrival. And this kind of comes from me as just an unofficial trilogy of sci-fi epics that Denis Villenueve has created over the past couple years. And obviously with the announcement of Dune 2, in my head I'm calling it Dune 2 Dunes. I know it won't be called Dunes, but I'm hoping it is. Anyways, with the announcement of that film, we now know that we are getting the second half of this story in about 2 years. But I wanted to come on here and talk about a pretty significant current movie release, Dune, one of the biggest budget, one of the biggest visual, biggest cast releases of 2021, one of the most anticipated ones as well, considering who's in it and how long we have waited after the announcement of who was in it, and that it was just coming out at all, and the fact that we had Denis Villeneuve doing it, but also just dropping the trailer and then waiting months and months and months and delaying the release until now, October 2021. We finally have the movie. It's been out for roughly 2 weeks now, maybe 2.5 weeks. And people, the responses are in, the opinions are flowing out. And one thing I really wanted to do that intrigued me about this movie in specific was I wanted to capture what people thought about it. If I had a chance to hear a document of interviews and thoughts of what people thought of the 1984 Dune, I think that'd be really interesting to hear. So this is why I am kind of doing this inaugural segment I'm calling Ask the Public. Essentially, I've compiled a couple Letterboxd reviews that I just wanted to mention that I think encapsulate some of the questions I asked. But most specifically, I want to just highlight some interviews I had with people in the public, people I know, my coworkers, my friends, about what they thought of Dune. And yeah, let's get into it. The first section, or at least the first question out of the 5 questions I asked, was essentially starting off with, what is the story behind you watching Dune? Now, the story for me is just, I saw the trailer and I made sure to not watch the trailer again. I watched it once and I knew I wanted to see it, so I went in pretty blind, having not known the story, and I actually got to watch it with a good buddy of mine who had read the books, and he was able to inform me in some of the more obscure, abstract concepts of the film, and able to kind of enlighten me so I wasn't completely losing the thread. But yeah, that was kind of why I did it. But I asked these people, which you will now hear in sort of field recording interviews, what was their story behind watching Dune?
A long time ago, I saw the original. I don't know if it's the actual original Dune, but I saw the old version of Dune. And I remember being like, this is really interesting, but I have no idea what's going on because I was a young lad when it came out, or at least when I watched it. And then, I don't know, I'm really into like dystopian sci-fi kind of stuff. And I know the movie's like otherworldly and the cinematography is really good. And that's why I wanted to watch it.
A friend was staying at my place for the weekend, and he had told me that it was on HBO Max, and I was interested in watching it, so we decided to watch it.
Well, I was gonna watch Dune anyway because I love Denis Villeneuve, and obviously we both love Blade Runner 2049. Great director, love Denis. I ended up reading the book because I have a podcast also, which I don't know if you mentioned on the show or not, To Watch to Read. That's currently on a little bit of a hiatus. But we were going to watch Dune for the podcast. Then I have a job now, so I have a lot less time to do a podcast. So it ended up happening. But yeah, the Dune story, I was going to do it for a podcast. Life got in the way, so I didn't do it for a podcast, but I still watched the movie. That's the Dune story.
So, one of those voices you might have recognized is actually the previous host of Film and, Connor. And I thank Connor very much for sitting down, talking with me about the movie. And you will be hearing him more with all of these questions. I gave him the full interview. But yeah, I found that to be just kind of an interesting question to ask people of like, how did they come across or at least plan to watch this movie? Next up, I asked, what did you think of it? What did you think of Dune? I mean, what were your thoughts? What were your impressions? I mean, overall, I've kind of just heard that it has a pretty positive reception, at least with some of the Letterboxd reviews that I've compiled here. One being from Toaster Monster. What an epic film. Sure, the characters may not be the most complex, the acting may not be the best, and the story is a bit jumbled, but the sheer power makes up for all that. It's like a cross between Lawrence of Arabia and Star Wars, two amazing films. The landscapes and the action sequences are awe-inspiring and majestic. This was the first film I've seen in theaters in a long time, and I can say with full confidence that this was a grand one to bring me back to the magic of cinema. And I gotta agree with Toaster Monster here in saying that I don't agree with all of it, but the fact that this is a great movie to bring people back into the magic of cinema, going to a theater, seeing this on the big screen, wow, what an experience. Another review I have, Joseph Ramos. This is actually translated from Spanish on Letterboxd, but this review, it is very simple, ambitious, but does not know what to do with so much material it has. It really marks the decadence that the blockbuster has had in recent years. Boring, without any fixed course, is to be admired by those who finish it without falling asleep. But hey, that's my opinion of Space Jam 2, which I thought was a fun kind of misdirection of a review. But here we go. Dune, on the other hand, is the movie that absolutely everyone should see in the theaters, and that I will finally not regret not having seen it in its time. The story and how it unfolds has a particularity. It is immense, but at the same time simple. It takes its time in certain parts, but is mainly so as not to confuse the viewer, since we are facing the construction and discovery of a new world where the smallest detail contributes to knowing more about its mythology. And what a great summation. Thank you, Joseph Ramos, for writing that lovely description of the movie. I kind of agree. I do. I really like how it's a bit dense, but also at times quite simple. You know, it's a very sleek concept from the book in a sense. And the movie, I think, does a really good job of capturing it, at least from what I've heard from friends who know the book and have described it to me. It's very similar. So here are some of my field recording responses to the question of what people thought of Dune.
I thought the first half was really hard to stay motivated to get through the first half because it's so slow. But the cinematography is really cool, and like the second half I thought was super interesting and awesome and action packed. But it was disturbing to see Aquaman without a beard.
I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it.
I loved it, man. I can't swear. Radio edit. I loved it. I think Dune's really solid. I think Denis Villeneuve is a great director, and I think he did some really cool stuff with this. There are multiple times where I fist bumped I watched it at home. So I fist bumped in my bedroom, and I had a great time.
So, overall, positive reception, I think the next logical question I felt like I wanted to ask the people I had sat down with was, what were some of your favorite parts of Dune? I mean, what about this movie, just from you liking it, what made you like it? What specific things? And one review I have from Bob McFace on Letterboxd. I'm a sucker for good world building and interesting politics, and this had that everywhere. Like, the voice, that's such a cool idea. The suits they use that reuses their sweat and tears, I love that. The awesome dragonfly ships, the weird pain hand box, creepy floating guy, loved it all. I also really like how it took its time with everything. Technically, this whole film could have been cut down to an intro, but I'm happy it wasn't because there would have been so much missed. I really think it taking its time worked very well to its advantage, and it will make whatever happens next so much more impactful. The characters were nothing amazing, but they're all pretty memorable. Something I did like is the dynamic between Paul and his mom. It's not the normal dynamic you see in these kind of stories. I think what a good summation of many of the things I myself appreciated. If it's not just the set pieces that were being used, at least for me, Dune does so well in giving you iconic imagery, stark, just out of the box imagery, out of the hand pane box imagery. But yeah, let's ask some local Vermonters, my coworkers and friends, what did they think? What were some of their favorite parts of Dune?
I thought that the costumes were really good. Like, all the stormtrooper looking people were really scary. And what were the Sardukans or something like that? Sardukar.
Oh yeah.
Those guys were super deadly. And just like it kind of, I feel like it set the story for a very involved epic of more movies, which I'm excited to see.
I do really like Jason Mamoa, so he was entertaining in it. I had never seen a movie with Timothee Chalamet in it before, and I thought he was pretty good. And then the scene with the big worm monster thing, that was pretty entertaining.
Oscar Isaac's performance for sure. The cinematography, Denis just being a wild man constantly. The set design. In terms of actual moments that are my favorite, I love how the shields look. I love when obviously Duncan Idaho is a huge standout for everybody, but when they shoot the dart at Duncan, he moves slightly, and it's spinning in his shield and it goes out. It's so cool. The bagpipes. I fist bumped at the bagpipes. No, I was with my girlfriend. I fist bumped and I said, "This movie's so dumb and I love it." That's what I said.
And overall, yeah, I agree. I agree with what's been said. And you also, you have the fan favorite, Duncan Idaho, portrayed by Jason Mamoa, who we've seen Aquaman and Khal Drogo in Game of Thrones. And he can add Duncan Idaho to that list of iconic characters he's portrayed, and this must be maybe not the best character, but my favorite performance of his. It works really well. And I find it really funny that he's kind of switched out his Aquaman, my man.
Ride ain't over yet.
My man.
For the Duncan Idaho, my boy.
Thank you, my friend.
Got it.
Duncan.
I think that's really funny. I don't know. But yeah, when we come back from the break, I have 2 more questions that I asked, and we will go deeper into just asking the public about what they thought of Dune.
Running late to class but still need that morning caffeine or hot breakfast to start your day out right? Download the Bite app by Sodexo and place your custom order for fast, easy pickup at Zyme. Open 8:30 a.m. to 3 o'clock p.m. Mondays through Fridays.
Being around too much loud noise like a leaf blower or rock concert can cause permanent hearing loss. And once it's gone, you can't get it back. Hearing loss is the third most common chronic health condition in the U.S. Almost twice as many people report hearing loss as diabetes or cancer. The louder a sound is, and the longer you're exposed to it, the more likely it will damage your hearing. Repeated exposure to noise can cause stress, anxiety, depression, high blood pressure, heart disease, and many other problems. Hearing loss from loud noise at home and in the community can be prevented. Avoid noisy places. Use earplugs, protective earmuffs, or noise-canceling headphones when near loud noises. Keep the volume down when watching TV or listening to music and using earbuds or headphones. Get your hearing checked and ask your healthcare provider how to protect your hearing from noise. To learn more, visit cdc.gov/vital signs.
All right, everybody in the car, let's go.
What are we gonna do first when we get there, Mom? Go for a hike?
Sure.
What about canoeing? Can we go canoeing too?
I don't see why.
How long does it take to get to the forest?
It's not that far, sweetie.
Are we there yet?
Yep, we're here.
Already?
It's a short drive from your neighborhood to your naturehood. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a neighborhood park or green space near you. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the U.S. Forest Service.
And welcome back. We are here discussing the 2021 Denis Villeneuve film Dune. Hopefully to be the processor of Dune 2, Electric Dunaloo. No, I can think of a better one. Dune 2. This time it's personal. That's one, I believe. Was that Connor who said that? I really like that one. But moving on from this bit, the next question I wanted to ask the public, was in fact, was there anything when you were watching the movie that popped out at you as truly unique? Something about this movie that really feels unique to this movie and no other movie that you've seen?
Truly unique. Well, like, in terms of, like, the pace of the movie, like, you don't get a lot of movies these days that are as slow as, like, 2001 Space Odyssey.
Yeah.
Like, it took me 3 sittings to get through Dune. Mainly to get through the first half until I, like, really was invested in the story and what was happening. But once it gets going, you're like, oh my god, this is incredible. So I thought that was at least unique to our current time period, is the pace of the movie is so much slower.
Truly unique. Well, I mean, I know it was like the first of all these types of movies because like the books came out before everything else, but it did make me think a lot of Star Wars with the whole storyline and all that. But I felt like they're kind of just, like this movie, they were kind of just dipping their toes in and like setting the basis for the whole franchise, it kind of seemed like it. And like they were teasing a lot more to come. So I'm looking forward to seeing like the other movies and then hoping that they kind of bring in the new stuff through that.
Truly unique to this movie? I guess just the whole vibe, man. There's nothing quite like Dune. Even like Blade Runner didn't feel like this. They kind of have the same like sauce, but they're still like 2 different batches of the same sauce. You know what I mean? They do taste different, and like it's just really solid. I think Denis is just someone like, because his movies they're so charming but are so depressing at the same time. Like Denis like has this very special feeling whenever you watch any of his stuff, where it's like, obviously this is a very different movie than Prisoners, but this still kind of felt like more fun Prisoners. You know what I mean?
And this felt like a question I wanted to pose to people, because I myself am always striving to find things in movies that push the medium forward in new, adventurous ways. And it feels like, for some people, I think Dune could be one of those movies. I mean, not for me specifically, but just in general, it's playing with some very new, unique things. Even just with aesthetics, kind of the ultimate harsh planet environment. I mean, this is kind of the idea of like, this is the top of the spectrum of harsh living for humanity. Heat of hundreds of degrees, monstrous sandworms hiding underneath the desert, attracted by even the slightest footstep of rhythm. Barely any plant life, vegetation, and all sorts of chemicals in the sand, a spice that causes all sorts of weird transformations and revelations when it comes to just interacting with the human brain. It's a really interesting film, and I wanted to see what people thought. And kind of the final question we have that I posed is, what do you think the legacy will be of this movie? And yeah, let's see what people said.
I don't think they're going to be able to make more of them. I think that will be the legacy. I don't think enough people will be interested.
Yeah, that's kind of my, yeah. Oh.
The legacy. Well, this movie alone, I don't really know how big of an impact it will have, but I feel like if they can turn this into a franchise, then it has the potential to be like another Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or stuff like that.
Well, I mean, people like it, which is a good thing. And obviously, we're getting a second one now. We're getting Dune Part 2, or Tune, as the kids call it.
And I think the running line through this, knowing there was a recent announcement of this, comes really well as well in a Letterboxd review I found from someone, Hassan. If there's one thing I hope is massively improved in Part 2, it's the action scenes. They were set up well here, but ended up looking pretty bland. Anyways, Villeneuve's sci-fi epic holds up very well on a rewatch, and I can't wait to see how it ages with Part 2. And isn't that the crux of it? The fact that we are getting a second part to this story, that it is confirmed, and that the legacy of this film will be very much tied together with the next one, with what we are assuming is the final installment of the first Dune book, considering that this one kind of went through about the first half of the first book, I believe. It's so interesting, at least for me, to consider the fact that trilogies and cinematic stories that need to be told over multiple films are often compared and contrasted together, even when sometimes those film crews and casts and the technology used is completely different over the years. I think one example of the most pure version of this is the Lord of the Rings trilogy, this kind of grand fantasy tale that was made in one fell swoop. This was essentially made, or those were, as one hours long movie. And they feel so cohesive that it works so well in rewatch, and it just works as one cohesive visual and narrative story. And we'll see if Dune can kind of follow up with that, you know? I think it definitely has the potential to. It would be hard, at least in my mind, to see Villeneuve, I guess, botch the ending, only because it feels like he's so in the pocket for this. He feels so connected to his interpretation of this story that a second part only just feels inevitable. And I think it will just, well, it's hard for me to say what it will just be. We're going to have to see. We're going to have to wait 2 years for the end of this story to be told in the way this first half has been told. And all I can say is, well, I'm excited. I am genuinely excited to see how this ends. I think it's been a really cool setup so far. A pretty fascinating 163 minutes put to the screen. And yeah, I'm just excited to see how it ends. Now, for reference, the 1984 Dune is in fact the entire book in one movie. So there is a lot kind of skipped as well, and some people have greater critiques on the interpretation that David Lynch, yes, that was directed by David Lynch, took with that story and put into his film. And I was going to do a segment called Double Dune, and I was very excited for Double Dune because it was just a cool, fun name. essentially, it would have been me comparing 1984 Dune to 2021 Dune. Very similar to the season 3 episode Ghost in the Shell, where we compared those two versions, the original and then the remake. But when I realized that the 1984 Dune went further in the story that this one did, it didn't feel right to go off and just talk about that one and then kind of have the story spoiled for me to see how they'll do these scenes in the second one. So if there is any double Dune episode, it'll have to be called Triple Dune, because it'll have to be the two parts of Villeneuve's Dune and Lynch's Dune, which both cover the same story, just one longer than the other. But yeah, I guess to wrap things up, my intention behind this segment, this episode of Ask the Public Dune, is I wanted to capture what it was like this month, these past couple weeks, for us here in 2021. I'm sure anyone listening in the future will be like, I was there for that. But this is what it was like talking about Dune and having it come out the way it did, and this just being the world we were in when this movie came out. I wanted to kind of capture that in a moment. And I'd love to do more Ask the Public segments when I have the chance to, when I find more people to ask. It was really hard to find people who'd found Dune. Most of my friends are very busy and haven't seen it yet. But yeah, I guess thank you for listening. That's about all I have to say about Dune 2021. You might hear me next week talking about something else. As always, all the movies we talk about, or in this case, the one movie we talk about, shows up on the Film and List on my Letterboxd account. Is DA_N, and the Film and List from our first 4 seasons of the show available on Connor's Letterboxd, CRAND Berry 18. That is Cranberry 18. As always, thank you for listening, and you'll hear me next week.